Okay, April 11th, 2020. How you guys doing? Before I start anything off, welcome to the world, Findlay May Sipes, who joined us today. You took your sweet time getting here. Did your agent, told you to hold back a little bit so you can get a better deal or something like that? But, hey, you got here. Welcome to the world. Have mommy and daddy, when you get a little older, tell you the story of what was going on during the time that you were arriving here, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of this world left for you so you can enjoy it in your old age. But welcome, fellow Aries, and I'm sure mommy and daddy are completely chuffed to have you, so right on. Okay, today we're going to keep on the pink theme from a couple days ago, and we'll go with another one of my top 10 favorite bands of all time, Pink Floyd. And I remember when The Wall came out. I remember the big hit, We Don't Need Another Brick in the Wall Part 2, We Don't Need No Education. And I always loved that album. But I got to give a shout out to my buddy Zimph, who turned me on to the old stuff. And Zimph, man, that was ace from you. And hopefully I could turn you guys on to some of the old stuff. First album, 1967, The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. This was with the infamous Syd Barrett. He was the principal singer and songwriter of the band, and it's a stellar album. A lot of great stuff on there, Astronomy Domine, and then like sort of Lucifer Sam, Matilda Mother, then some of the, wacky stuff like, Interstellar Overdrive, and of course the infamous Bike, which you have to hear to appreciate. Problem was with Sid went a little bit crazy on the hallucinogenics, and he started to freak out. They play shows and he just strum one chord, stare blankly or whatever. And so they kind of brought in Sid's buddy, David Gilmour, to sort of fill the role. And in 1968, the second album, Saucer Full of Secrets, came out, and it was only one song by Sid, Jug Band Blues. He had effectively been transitioned out of the band. Great album as well. The first album is stellar. The second album is great as well. Still more experimental. Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun. My favorite, Corporal Clegg, which is sort of like the first of Waters' anti-war songs, or mockery of war, and that he is a theme that he's continued on to this day. 1969, the third album, which was More, which was a soundtrack from a movie by, I can't think of his name, but they did two movies from him, and it'll come to me somewhere in eventually. French director, and more film. I got to find it out because it's going to drive me nuts. Barbet Schroeder. And he has actually appeared in a couple of movies. And actually, a great movie you should see by him is General Idi Amin Dada, Barbet Schroeder. Anyways, fantastic album. The Nile song, proto-punk. Green is the color, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. Cymbeline, which is great. Really, really good album. Next, in 69, they release Ummagumma, double disc set. Side one is them live at a club called Mothers, doing a lot of the songs that you'd known or they've jammed out to. Astronomy Domine, Careful with That Axe, Eugene. That was actually the first time that appeared. It originally was off a soundtrack from Zabriskie Point that they had done. There was another song that sort of became Careful with That Axe, Eugene. Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun, and of course, The Saucer Full of Secrets, and they're just long space jams. The second disc is like everyone does a little bit of a solo thing. So Rick Wright had a Sisyphus Part 1, 2, 3, 4. Roger Waters did a track called Grantchester Meadows, and then this sort of interesting noise track called Several Species of Small Furry Creatures Gathered Together in a Cave and Grooving with a Pict. It needs to be listened to in order to be believed. You'll enjoy it. Then Gilmour does The Narrow Way, parts 1, 2, and 3, his guitar thing. And then Nick Mason does 3 tracks, The Grand Vizier's Garden Party, and, a drum thing. Very, very, very interesting stuff. Really enjoyable, but a little bit, peculiar. They get it together in the year I was born, 1970s Atom Heart Mother. Stellar album. The first side is one song, and it's called the Atom Heart Mother Suite. And then If, which is great. Summer of 68, which is great. Fat Old Son, which is great, and then Alan's Psychedelic Breakfast. And at this time, I'm going to ask you guys also to look back. There's a bunch of singles that Pink Floyd released, and you could find them now. Little bits showed up on like a greatest hits album called Relics, you know, stuff like See Emily Play, Apples and Oranges, Julia Dream, Point Me to the Sky. Great stuff that were the singles that they released before the band came out. And I think you'll have to gather them. They're not readily available. They're pieces of box sets and best ofs. And then 71 Metal. And that's where you've got, One of These Days, A Pillow of Winds, Fearless, which is just stellar, Saint-Tropez, which is, pretty dope, Seamus, which is interesting, and of course the 23-minute Echoes. And rumor has it, and Brother John and I tried this once, that if you go in the ending of 2001 Space Odyssey, if you start with, there's a certain moon that floats by, Echoes goes with the thing, but then again, we heard about that, and I'll cover that shortly. 72 was Obscured by Clouds, the second Barbet Schroeder film that they did a soundtrack for. That album is amazing. I love that album. I highly recommend you checking that album out. I actually saw the movie, and the movie's pretty baked. Very interesting. The soundtrack doesn't play a huge role in the movie, but the soundtrack is definitely better than the movie, but the movie is a must-see. 1973, Dark Side of the Baboon, a.k.a. Dark Side of the Moon. You've heard this. You know this album. I don't need to tell you shit about it. Longest album, the top 100 of all time. It's all right. Yeah, I like it. But if you were to look at the entire Pink Floyd oeuvre or canon, I think this is one of the weaker songs, or weaker albums. And I know you guys are going like, what? No, it really is. I really think there's a lot better stuff. And this was kind of the start of, I think, the commercialization of Floyd, yay and nay. I mean, as I've gotten older, I appreciate the older stuff more. It's not bad, but I really love Atom Heart Mother, and I love Obscured by Clouds. Those albums are really great, and unfortunately they don't get any love, and I'll come to that in a bit. 75, Wish You Were Here. I really enjoy this album. This was a little bit rougher and a little bit jammier. This was kind of an open letter to Syd Barrett, and as legend goes, Syd shows up in the studio while they're recording. He's shaved his head. He's gained like 80 pounds. He's sort of rambling to himself. Great album. 5 songs on there. My favorite is Have a Cigar, which was sung by Roy Harper. Hats off to Roy Harper. But a great album. Enjoyable. 1977's Animals. Okay. Now this is an album that is forgotten as far as I'm concerned. Giving it the love with my shirt. And when I was in Britain back in like 2002, 2003, I actually took the train and went by Battersea, and it was like a surreal experience to see Battersea Station where they shot this album cover at. This is a great, great, great album. I love this album and should be getting a lot more love than it does. I don't think they've released a remastered edition of it lately. They remastering, Dark Side of the Baboon a million times. They've never, I'm not sure, but I don't think they have. And they should, because it isn't part of the illusion or immersion set they should give this album some love, because it's stellar. And this was the album, the famous story that in Montreal, a fan groped on the stage, climbed on the stage, and Roger Waters spat in his face. And this was the genesis of The Wall, 1979. I love this album. it is a perfect album. I've heard it one time too many. I can't deny this album. I really do love this album. But as I've gotten older, it's a little bit too bombastic. It's still brilliant, but I do enjoy the Animal stuff. I enjoy some of their more jammier stuff than this. Don't know why, but it's still a brilliant album. 1983, The Final Cut. My number one favorite Pink Floyd album of all time. Fight me. This is a very divisive album because a lot of people don't care for it. I think it's more of a Roger Waters solo album, and I'll touch base on that in a bit. I think it's stellar. I listen to this album almost like twice a year from start to finish. Interesting thing that they did in the remaster, Roger Waters added When the Tigers Broke Free to it, which is, I love that song. It only existed on the Wall movie. And I love that song. But I'm torn because he puts it between One of the Few and The Hero's Return. And this is one of those things when you enjoy an album for the album thing, I always want to go into The Hero's Return from One of the Few. And it's broken up by When the Tigers Broke Free. A brilliant song, but I'm kind of torn by it, but this album is stellar. And I actually redid a version of Paranoid Eyes, and it won on a radio show called A Floydian Slip. It won their surrogate band contest a couple years back. I received a whole bunch of swag, shot glasses and t-shirts, and it was an internationally syndicated radio show, and that got played, and it was really cool. And maybe I'll at the end of this I'll post the video of my version of Paranoid Eyes. But this album is stellar. The single that they released when this album came out was Not Now, John. Fuck all that, we gotta get on with these. But it's a perfect album. Starts with The Post-War Dream, ends with Two Sons in the Sunset. Rick Wright had left, and Nick Mason and David Gilmour sort of phoned in their parts. Yes, this is effectively a Roger Waters solo album. It's brilliant. It's absolutely, absolutely brilliant. 5 years goes by. Roger does some solo albums. Gilmour does a solo album. The band comes out with A Momentary Lapse of Reason. Time has made it better for me. I think it's a David Gilmour solo album, and I really do enjoy it. But at the time, I was really denied it. After that, they released, I believe it was A Delicate Sound of Thunder, which was the first live album. I had that. I got rid of it because they sound like the record, so to speak. I don't want to hear bands that sound like the record. And I'll get to that when I talk about the seeing live. It bothered me a lot. And then they put out Division Bell in 94, and that was an excellent album. Really, really good album. It's, again, I'd say it's closer to a Floyd album than it is to a Gilmour album, but it's a stronger Gilmour solo album. They released, I think it was called Pulse. I didn't even bother getting it. It had 2-disc set. Disc 1 was live, Dark Side of the Baboon. Big deal. So I have the studio album, and it's perfect. I don't want to hear you doing it live. Almost perfect. Nah. And then it wasn't until they did release box sets, the Immersion box set or Illusion box set or something like that. But it was 2014 when they released The Endless River, which was the last Floyd album. And it's Rick Wright's contributions. It's basically whatever they scraped off the floor and said, okay, this is Rick Wright playing, or his writing, or he was on it. And it's all right. Double disc set. Meh. And then there's a whole series of other stuff to get. I'm going to leave Floyd as Floyd. Of course, there's a collection of great dance songs, and there was a bunch of other tracks where they re-recorded Money on that and whatever. But, yeah, it's all right. Going on, Gilmour's first solo album, David Gilmour, was in 78, and it's stellar. absolutely stellar. Highly recommend it. His second album was About Face in '84, which I loved. And there's a live at Hammersmith Odeon from '84 from that tour that's wonderful. He didn't put out a solo album again until 2006, On an Island, which is, it's all right. It feels like Dave getting out of bed in the morning, real slow and whatever. And on that tour, he played the entire album and played a bunch of Floyd and never gave love to the David Gilmour or the About Face album, and I denied him. I did not go see him, so I've never seen Gilmour solo because of that. He then released Rattle That Lock in 2015. That's a little bit better, but, you know, it's all right. Nothing really much to excite me. On the other hand, Roger Waters in '84 released The Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking, which is his first solo album, and it is outstanding. This is the album that I think is like the companion set to The Final Cut. Brilliant album. '87, he releases Radio Chaos. It's okay. It's okay. It's you know, I listen to it because I have to, I guess. In 1990, he releases The Wall Live in Berlin, double disc set. It's The Wall Live with a million special guests. Scorpions open it up with In the Flesh and then all sorts of guests. And they end it with The Tide is Turning from Radio Chaos, which is actually a very strong song, and that version is very good. Yeah, it's cool. You know, I get it. Then it was 92's Amused to Death that I call Bored to Death. And it's an album that, it's like a 1 hour long album that would have probably been better if it was a half hour, because Roger just goes on and on and on, you know, and just, it really started, it was like one of those things where Roger, I felt, needed to get back with those guys so they can have some tension, that maybe that tension helped them hone the material better. This was like, he was just, you know, like I say, I've grown to like it, but like I say, the species has bored itself to death. Interesting little thing. Check out the Ballad of Bill Hubbard and research Bill Hubbard. Research the guy who tells that story. I found a World War I, Alfie Razzle, a World War I veteran. I found him where that dialogue came from, and it's like 8 hours of tapes of him telling about World War I, and it's fantastic. You'll really enjoy it. Wasn't until 2017 that Waters released a live album, well, he did release a live album, which I didn't even bother getting, and I'll explain why shortly, similar why I didn't bother getting the other ones. But then he released his last studio album, Is This the Life We Really Want? And it's actually pretty good. It's actually pretty damn impressive. I highly recommend it. You know, and I'll leave it at that. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. So, only saw Pink Floyd as the entity once, July 5th, 1994, at the CNE in Toronto. Went up with Brother John. I am not going to tell you what happened, but yeah, you can see it on my website if you want to find out the story. Yeah, you know, again, it was like seeing Pulse or whatever live. They did nothing. The earliest they did on there was one of these days. They did open up with Astronomy Domine, but it was like, whatever. You know what I'm saying? It was like, yeah, no thanks. I only saw Roger Waters once, and that was in August 1st, 1999. Went up with Brother John Zimpf and my girlfriend, who went to become my wife and now my ex-wife. And Roger opens up with the first 5 songs of The Wall, right up to Mother. He does Southampton Dock, which is all he does off of Final Cut. He did do Pigs on the Wing into Dogs. He does Welcome to the Machine to Shine On You Crazy Diamond. Pretty cool. Second set, Breathe, Time, Money. He does Every Stranger's Eyes. That's all he gives us off of Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking. And then he pretty much does like, because he never really toured on Bored to Death. He does that. And, you know, and then he ends up with Brain Damage, Eclipse, and then the Encore's Comfortably Numb. Okay, all right. Yeah, I wasn't into it at all. Wasn't into it at all. Just, I want to hear some good stuff, man. 1 year ago today, April 11th, 2019, went up with my buddy Bob Drozdowski. You remember from a video, I did a couple of videos previous, and met up with Brother John. We were 6th row stage left. Nick Mason's Saucer Full of Secrets finally did some real Floyd. Opens up with Interstellar Overdrive, Astronomy Domine, Lucifer Sam, Fearless, Obscured by Clouds, When You're In, Remember a Day, Arnold Lane, The Rare Vegetable Man that I don't think it's on a box set. You can't even find it. I don't have it on any of my collections. He does If, Into an Atom Heart Mother medley, back to If. They do the Nile song, Green is the Color, Let There Be More Light, Childhood's End off of Obscured by Clouds, Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun, See Emily Play, Bike, and then the only sort of contemporary thing, if you want to call it, they do One of These Days. The encore was A Saucer Full of Secrets and Point Me to the Sky. And that has got to be like, oh my God, yes, thank you, thank you. Thank you for acknowledging some killer Floyd. So, y'all probably know all the big stuff. Enjoy it. Give Animals some love. Give The Final Cut some love. Give Gilmour's first 2 solo albums some love. Give Waters' first solo album some love. And then just dig and enjoy life. And give The Final Cut some love. That's a great album. Or did I say that already? And, you know, Floyd, I love them. They're great. But in some ways, they've kind of disappointed me by their lack of respect for the old stuff. And Nick has kind of made it, you know, thankful. It's made me thankful that he's done that. And the same thing with Gilmour, disrespecting his solo stuff, which is just absolutely stellar. So everybody stay safe, stay home. Let's help flatten out this curve. Thank you to health industry workers. We really appreciate it. And coming up right now is my video for my version of Paranoid Eyes that I shot in this living room. And I had recorded it back in like 2003, I kept working on it, replacing this, replacing that. So I finally released it a couple of years ago. And so when you actually see me like record with Mike Crishone redoing his guitar solo, Poultry redoing his drums, that was filmed recently, but their parts were recorded, you know, 15 years prior. And it was funny when Mike was playing his thing, he's like, I have to relearn this solo. Is this what I played? What did I do? So it was kind of funny as we faked it out and, you know, kind of pretended that it was now. But a lot of that stuff is really old and, you know, recording. And the only thing that was originally kept was my acoustic guitar part. And it was sweetened with, Mike Crishone on lead guitar and electric guitar. Jaffo, my buddy Jaffo playing acoustic guitar, Poultry on drums, and Rob Browning, who, when I was doing a mix, said, you know what's missing? Hammond B3 organ. So he wrote a part and played on that one. So till next time, hide behind your paranoid eyes. Stay safe, everybody. We'll be in touch soon. Peace.
Button your lip and don't let the shield slip. Take a fresh grip on your bulletproof mask. If they try to break down your disguise with their questions, you can hide, hide, hide. Behind paranoid eyes. You put on your brave face, slipped over the road for a job. you grin as you casually lean on the bar, laughing too loud at the rest of the world with the boys in the crowd. And you'll hide, hide, hide behind petrified eyes. You believed in their stories of fame, fortune, and glory. Now you're lost in a haze of alcohol soft middle age. The pie in the sky turned out to be miles too high, high, and you'll hide, hide, hide. Behind brown in my